Welcome to the 6th Executive Leadership Council Business Brief. I'm Mike Hyter, President and CEO of the Executive Leadership Council. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and according to the Susan G. Komen website, every 2 minutes, a woman in the United States is diagnosed with breast cancer. Even more alarming is the fact that breast cancer is the most common cancer among Black women, and they have the highest breast cancer mortality rate overall. Those stats make me appreciate today's guest even more. Today, I am honored and privileged to chat with Paula Schneider, the President and CEO of the Susan G. Komen Foundation, where ELC Vice Chair Ed Dandridge serves as board chair, by the way. Under Paula's leadership, not only is the organization focused on accelerating breakthroughs for the most aggressive and deadly breast cancers, they are equally passionate about addressing the disparities in breast cancer outcomes between Black and white women across the country that result in Black women being 40% more likely to die from the disease. Through a new initiative called Stand for Her, a health equity revolution, Komen is working to reduce the disparities through targeted interventions beginning in 10 U.S. metropolitan areas where the disparities are the greatest. Welcome, Paula. Thank you for taking the time from your busy schedule to join me today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, it's so nice to have you. Let's get started, shall we?
Sure.
Paula, I'm particularly interested in hearing more about this new initiative that Komen has undertaken to reduce the disparities in breast cancer outcomes among Black and white women. What led you to launch the Stand for Her initiative?
Yeah, the Stand for Her initiative is it's a new initiative as far as the branding goes, but not a new initiative as far as health equity goes within the organization. This has been something that has been ingrained in our organization for many, many years, because if you actually want to stop the deaths of breast cancer, you have to make sure that every population is taken into consideration. And if Black women are dying, and they are at an average of 40% more likely to die than white women that get the disease, then we're leaving behind a whole group of women. And if we care about breast cancer deaths, then we have to make sure that we are taking care of everyone, no matter where they fall or where they live, because it shouldn't be where you live or what color that you are that dictates whether you live. So we have a 10-city initiative that was funded by Robert Smith and Vista Equities that has 10 cities where the disparities are at the highest. And they're big cities throughout the country. And we've done a lot of work in each of those cities to understand what is causing the disparities, what's sort of the story behind the story. And going into each of these cities and each of the constituents in these cities and the communities, and understanding what's happening in these cities and what can we do to intervene. So we've been working on this for a number of years and come up with a landscape analysis that allows us to look at each of these 10 cities and find out all the data as to what's happening in those cities and then what we need to do to intervene.
Wow. You know, the disparity in breast cancer mortality rate between Black and white women, it's astonishing, Paula.
Yeah, right.
And you said something that's so key. You're committed to stop admiring the problem.
Yeah.
And begin taking concrete steps to solve it.
Yeah.
So what has Susan G. Komen accomplished so far?
Well, I will tell you that this is something that has been going on. Our health equity initiative was funded by Fund 2, and that was Robert Smith's initiative from Vista Equities, right? He's been a fantastic partner of us, a big philanthropist that really cares about the outcomes. This is not an easy task. About 10 years ago, Komen helped to fund an initiative in the south side of Chicago that was trying to find out sort of the story behind the story as to why Black women were dying so much more than white women there. And what we found out is that these initiatives that we put into place, and it was really it was more about the quality of care that Black women were receiving. And we put some initiatives in place that helped to train the trainers, make sure that the mammograms were being read correctly, et cetera. And we had the opportunity of decreasing the deaths or the mortality rate of Black women versus white women by 35%. So that was kind of the pilot program that we went after. And then figuring out, you wouldn't have known that that was what was causing the issues unless you went into the community and you spoke with the leadership there. You found out what was happening, you looked at all the data, and you came up with a game plan to mitigate the issues. So we've spent the last, I'd say, about 3 years working on a landscape analysis in these 10 cities that literally led us to figuring out now what are the initiatives that we need to take in order to make a difference. Each city is a little different, but these are not podunk cities. These are big cities. They're like Los Angeles. You got DC, our nation's capital. You have the Memphis, which I mentioned. You have Chicago. You have Pittsburgh. You have Dallas, Fort Worth area, and Houston. So, I mean, and there's several more, but these are just the top 10 cities. And then there's another 150 cities behind these cities that also have very high disparate death rates that are higher than average. So we're taking this on, and it's, you sort of are chewing an elephant one bite at a time here and figuring out what we need to do. But we didn't go in there as like the great white hope, and we're going to figure out all the problems and we're going to solve for you. And what we did was we involved the community in figuring out what the issues were. We have the data that backs us up on what those issues are. And now we can create the interventions that are going to be meaningful for each one of those cities.
I hope our listeners heard what I heard regarding your approach, Paula, to addressing the disparities in these 10 metropolitan communities.
Yeah.
First, you listened to your stakeholders.
Which is why it also takes so long, right?
Yeah, well, but listening is so key, you know, and then you took the time to learn from your in-depth review of healthy and policy data, and all before you took action. Now, this was just very important to sort of call that out. But I'm curious, what did the reports find? That when you went through that process,
and it's different in every city, but there's some similarities, right? There's financial toxicity of when you get breast cancer. I'm a breast cancer survivor, and it is very expensive to get sick in this country, right? There's the financial toxicity. We found that some similarities are that one of the major reasons that people don't stay in treatment is their ability to get to treatment. Right. It's literally the making sure that you have the transportation to get to your treatment. It's understanding who's going to take care of the kids and the family while I'm in treatment. So we have a treatment assistance program that helps for women that can't afford it. And one of the main things that women have been asking for is literally help with their rent in order to make sure that they can stay in treatment. Like, nobody should have to make the decision that their family gets fed or not fed because they want to stay in treatment, or they split the amount of money that they can spend on their own medical help. It's going to keep them alive, right? So there's those major things that we're going to find similarities in every city, but then you have specific things like in the south side of Chicago, when we found out that there were some clinics that were reading mammograms incorrectly and giving false negatives when people actually had positives. And we did a train the trainers. We helped with interventions in those areas. We help with implicit bias and racism in the healthcare settings. There's all kinds of interventions that need to happen, but each of these, and taking the time to figure out in those 10 cities, what are the interventions that are necessary in each of these cities. And, again, other than the overarching ones, there are very specific initiatives that we need to implement in order to make change.
Paula, I'm so glad that you addressed the fact that disparities are not solely due to biological factors or access to screenings. Those other factors are most not likely the top of mind for so many people. So I'm glad that you at least, sort of acknowledge that. And based on that research, what is Komen doing to help close the gaps specifically?
Well, there's, oh my gosh. First and foremost, we have, there's 3 legs of the stool, right, for us. We have cutting edge research. And Komen has had its fingerprints on pretty much every major breakthrough that's happened in breast cancer in the last 40 years. But we're making sure that, especially in clinical trials, that Black women are invited to join clinical trials, because if all the clinical trials that are happening are for women that look like me, then you're leaving out a major segment of the population. And knowing, there are some differences. Black women are more prone to get triple negative breast cancer, which is one of the more deadly kinds of breast cancer. It's actually what I had. So I happen to know a lot about that. And the treatment is, it's rough to get through it, but 14 years later, I'm here. So it can happen, and does happen all the time. There's whether or not you have a history of breast cancer in your family, being able to open up and talk about that. We have a lot of our initiatives. We have our Worship in Pink, which is we have advocates that go into the churches and Black churches and talk about family history, knowing your family health history, making sure you get your mammograms, dispelling any myths that are out there about breast cancer. I hear a lot that people think that it's not a Black women's disease. It's an every woman's disease. The two things that make a difference in whether or not you'll get breast cancer is being female and getting older, right? So there's no options there. It's not like you can't opt out of breast cancer. It happens, and it happens to every ethnicity. But making sure that we are telling the stories and getting into the communities to make a difference is really important. So we have sort of the research aspect of it, and then we have the advocacy aspect of it. We have a significant policy shop that helps us to go in, and we've had more state-led bills that we passed about 12 state-led Komen bills for women's health over the past 18 months. And we worked mostly in the state because it was more difficult to get things done at the federal level. We're working both state and federal. We will continue. We are one of the very few things that people can agree on from a bipartisan standpoint, because all women get breast cancer, regardless of your political beliefs. So we work through that, and we've done a really good job of making it easier for women to get health care. One of the main things that we fight for is making sure that we continue on with the breast cancer program. It's testing for hundreds of thousands of women that are below the poverty line, and keeping that as a safety net opportunity. But you got to make sure that once you get the screening, if there's a finding, that there's a path forward and a way for them to get help, right? So helping through that. So there's the advocacy side of it, and then the third part of it is working in community, and that just means working with people in the communities that they're in, and speaking to them in a way that they can understand. One of the main things that we're working on right now, which I think is really interesting, is our patient navigation programs. When I had breast cancer, I went in, and one of the very first meetings that I had was with my patient navigator. I didn't even know such a thing existed. And I walked in, and this woman, Susan, I can tell you, she is etched in my memory because she was so important to me. And I had great healthcare, and I had great support and all of that. But Susan, I followed her around like a puppy, because she was my thought leader in helping me to understand what came next. Because on average, you have between 11 and 14 doctors when you get breast cancer. So there's a lot of navigation that has to happen. And what we're doing now is the research shows that if people have patient navigators, they do better in treatment. And if they have navigators that look like them, they do better in treatment. So we have launched and are starting a training program for Black patient navigators. And that allows them to, for every person that we train, let's say they work with 100 people a year or more, the exponentially we help with the training, because that helps to get to helps these women that are now trained navigators to get better jobs. And it also helps for the amount of people that they touch, and helping keep them in treatment. So it's sort of a dual function for us. And we did our pilot program for training Black navigators, and it went really well. And it was so heartwarming to watch the graduation and to hear everyone speak about the wonderful work that they're about to embark upon. and how they enjoyed the training for it. And it's about implicit bias. It's about, all of the things that we've talked about in Breast Cancer 101 and being able to help people along in their journey. So that's been really, really exciting. And we have a very long queue of women that are signed up for the next sets of training. So we're super excited about that. And that's very helpful, specifically in the Black community.
Wow, that's so awesome. Wow. Paula, let me say this. I am truly grateful for all of the work that you're doing through this initiative. And it's my hope that any Black woman watching this episode now knows that they have an advocate in this battle against breast cancer and feels empowered by the information that you shared. Before I let you go, please tell me and all of us what people and organizations can do to help.
Well, first of all, we're here to help you. And I think the very first thing to know is that if you or anyone that you know gets a diagnosis, go to our Komen helpline, because once we've got you, we've got you. We take care of you from start to finish. We help you to understand what you'll need to know about breast cancer. We also help you to understand if there's treatment assistance programs, meaning cash, that we can help you with. And all part of this journey, because it is a long journey. So that is something that we want everyone to make sure of. We also have on our website the, know your family history. So you can take a test that will talk about what your family history could be. So we're here for you for that. And then the other part is there's many ways for us to volunteer, right? Obviously donations, there's nothing that's going to cure cancer other than cash, because cash pays for research and cash pays for all the work that we do. So that's always greatly appreciated. And then if you want to volunteer, there's ways for you to volunteer in, we have races and walks that are in each city. We have our advocates that are our advocacy groups. There's over 100,000 women, and it's a very diverse group of women. And men too, that work with us on our advocacy. So you can join us on that. So, you can just go on to our website and see what the opportunities are. And it takes a village. So if you help us, help you, and we will be there.
Wonderful. Well, I want to make sure that at least I said while we're here together that I honor you and your recovery. I'm glad that you're still here. And for the work that you've been able to do. Any closing words before I close out? I just want to make sure that you've.
Yeah, I will say that, a lot of women have not gotten their mammograms because of COVID. And ladies, put your big girl panties on. Go get your mammograms. You're going to need to do it because, the outcomes are so much worse if it goes and you do have a finding and it's 6 months or a year later. Then your chances of survival go down with the more time that it takes. So I need you to go out and be strong, get your mammograms, tell everyone and just keep circulating that information, because the more people that, especially now, because COVID has literally brought down the numbers of diagnosis so significantly. And that it's not that cancer is canceled or that it's not happening. It just means that people are not getting diagnosed. So my word of wisdom for you is to go and make sure you do that.
Paula, this has been a valuable and enlightening conversation, and I really appreciate you sharing this wealth of knowledge with us. I really do.
Well, and thank you for the forum, because I think it's really, really important that this is something that Komen has been involved in our disparities in healthcare for years and years and years, and we will continue because it's the right thing to do.
And thank you for your ongoing commitment to reducing the disparities in breast cancer mortality for Black women and empowering them with greater awareness and access to resources through Stand for Her initiative. Yeah. To our viewers, thank you for joining us, and stay tuned for details about our next ELC CEO LinkedIn chat in November.
Thank you so much, Mike. Lovely meeting you.
My pleasure.